and its management. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are
Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. Thank you once again for joining our show. Today, I have my superstar panel, Attorney Milton and Attorney Vanita Banks. And we're going to be dealing with a potpourri of subjects today. Also, I should have a special guest, also Dean Robinson of George Washington Law School. We've seen a seismic shift in the political landscape in the last 3 weeks. It's the most fundamental change in any political campaign, probably in the history of America. We saw in shock about a month ago, back in June, well, a little bit more than a month ago, we saw the president engaged in a debate to refresh everybody's recollection. And in the debate, he seemed like he was ill, but he was very soft-spoken, and he fumbled, and he did some things that led a lot of people to say he was unqualified to run for the presidential office again. Well, the president then reconsidered, and he decided to drop out the race. But when he dropped out the race, he endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris. And it's been the most extraordinary thing that occurred in American politics. The campaign has raised now, as of today, about $350 million in 3 weeks, got over 200,000 volunteers. And then every stop in place, they had more demand for tickets than anybody in American history. In Detroit, they had tickets for 15,000. They had 47,000 tickets requests. So this is just a dramatic shift. Now, in response, Donald Trump did a press release, and if anybody paid attention to it, he was incoherent. It was clear that he has some significant mental decline. He was talking about subject matter, and in no time did he answer a single question. I watched part of it, and it was disgraceful. And when Joe Biden made errors like that, there was a clamor from the Democrat side for him to drop out the race. I wonder whether or not they would ever say that to Trump, because he did much worse than Biden ever done in his last interview. I don't know whether or not any of you guys watched that interview. Did Vanita, Milton, or Dean, did you guys watch any of that press interview involving Donald Trump down in Mar-a-Lago this week?
I did.
What do you think about it?
Good morning, and thank you all for having me. And I see all the experts are on, so this is very, very good. He was showing the signs of his age, and he was never the smartest, the sharpest knife in the drawer. He has a limited appreciation of serious subjects, and it's not clear, what he did when he went to college. But he was unhinged. He's a narcissist. He only talks about himself. He sees everything through his very, very limited role. But he was incoherent. He strings ideas together that are actually not connected. We don't know what he stands for, other than he is undemocratic. He seeks to be an autocrat. He seeks to turn this country into a dictatorship. He loves dictators. He appreciates them. And then anything that we have achieved, we, meaning those of us who were brought to this country to work for free, and for others who have come to this country who are not from Europe in 1900, he seeks to turn the clock back. He wants us to be in the place where we were before we worked very, very hard, and our ancestors and you all worked very hard to permit us to live the American dream, if you will. It is not clear what he's talking about, other than, for example, he wants he wants to eliminate everything in his view that is anti-American. He wants to he's with his gang wants to define anything that's even remotely like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we know for us, that's a relatively new term. He wants to turn, he is expressing the view that all of that should be eliminated. And importantly, though he says he's not connected at all to Project 2025, everything he says is a summary of what that project articulates. And because he's not studied, because he's not a serious person, he's simply stringing things together. I think he is in, I agree with you, Nathaniel, cognitive decline. And that's why he will not submit to any updated medical record, medical examination with a record that can be seen by all.
Attorney Banks, one quick question about that. When she was talking about medical testing and cognitive decline, I remember that he had his physician in New York write a letter that seemed like a 5-year-old wrote it, saying he's in the greatest condition of any person ever ran for president. It was laughable without any scientific basis. So giving him a cognitive test by somebody, they will fake the results. So, but I see the result firsthand, like what Dean said. I saw a person, see, cognitive decline is not solely based on age, because you could be 100 years old and be completely mental alert. I've seen people have this type of decline as teenagers. So it has a lot to do with the functionality of the brain and the disease process. A lot of different factors go into that. And but that's the first thing. But this Project 25 that Dean mentioned, Vanita, Milton, I have some problem when I look at a document that gives a blueprint as to how the Republican plan to run the United States of America. Basically, when you look at the document, it's a voluminous document. I looked at the summary, but essentially, and when they say make America great again, they're talking about in the 60s when we had segregation. I mean, what was so great about that?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Attorney Lee. Thanks so much for having me. This is really a tremendous opportunity, and you're absolutely right. There is a lot going on in the world, and we've seen a seismic shift in the last 3 weeks, and it's just been incredible. And we are seeing, as has been described this morning, the former president's incoherent reaction to the events of the last 3 weeks with his racist tropes and dog whistles, which are, quite frankly, colleagues, to be expected and business as usual. And from my perspective, we should not be focusing so much on him and what he's doing, because it's business as usual, to be expected, but focusing on the excitement that's been generated by our Vice President, Kamala Harris, over the last 3 weeks. And we should be focused on knocking on doors, registering people to vote, organizing, mobilizing over the next, what is it now, 80 days before the election. So we have a lot of work to do. We're seeing a shift in the polls, which, again, you know, polls are somewhat credible, but not so much. She received a huge endorsement from a very powerful and influential Latino group this week. And one poll resonated with me that with respect to Latino voters, she is 55% to 37% for the former president. And also, she is out pacing him in swing states, again, with respect to Latino voters. And those swing states of Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. So this is really good news. And from my perspective, we should be focused on getting out the vote, continuing the message of freedom, hope, joy, the rule of law, maintaining our democracy. We are not going back to Jim Crow days. And also peeling back the components of Project 2025, which we began that overview last week, Attorney Lee and Grimes, and then also looking at Agenda 47. Those are two companion documents. While the Project 2025 was authored by the Heritage Foundation, and I would also add several former president officials and former staffers. Just please go to donaldtrump.com where you can read their entire platform, which includes many of the policies that are articulated in Project 2025, including eliminating all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, which have been a long mainstay in corporate America, as well as the federal government over the years. And we all know that diversity, equity, and inclusion is not intended to ensure that unqualified individuals receive jobs or contracts, but qualified individuals that didn't have the opportunity to access those opportunities. But Project 2025 and Agenda 47 are very, very scary. We need to break these planks down and ensure that the people are aware that all people will be adversely affected by these policies.
Attorney Grimes, one of the things that the right-wing conservative have been advocating is expansion of the qualified immunity. You, of all people, know how dangerous that is, giving police officers immunity from suit and prosecution.
Yes, and I was listening to our guest, and forgive me for not remembering her name. What is it?
Dean Robinson.
Ms. Robinson, and listening to Vanita. I agree with you and them about what we're dealing with today. I support what Vanita said initially about we can't get distracted by Trump because that's his play game. That's his game book, is to create excitement around him. He's in the news every day for something new. I was reading this morning online about he said that he was on a helicopter with Willie Brown and it was a daggone near crash, and which bonded them in this almost death experience. And Willie said that he got something to tell about Miss Harris. You know, it's kind of a little innuendo there that, you know, I know some dirt on her because we were romantically involved. And Willie said, that's a fiction. He'd never been on a helicopter with Donald Trump. Or that, you know, or that. He may have flown on his plane, but he wasn't even going to give him that. But he's never, you know, that's a fiction. But he's good at that. He whispers that and it becomes big news. Another thing that scares me about what we're dealing with today is what this woman is writing about in this book about the quiet damage, QAnon, and the destruction of the American family. This is some scary stuff, y'all, about how they are lying to the American public and doubling down on the lie and then adding another lie to get your attention. That's their plague book. And that's what he's continued to do. And they're laughing at us because we're following them. We're following them, trying to fight what they're saying, which is you can't ignore it, but we need to be given more attention to Biden's success, what he has done for this country, what he has acquired for this country, and what Kamala Harris can do, and her new bulldog vice president. This boy is all right with me. I like him. I like him, y'all. But so we can't get caught up in how we deal normally with what people say, because Trump will spin it and win it again if we do that. So it's got to be a more strategic plan to tell the public, impress upon the public the gains that Biden has made and what Kamala Harris can do with our support. I just don't know how to say it any other way. So it's scary though. When I read this book about how families are, a husband is in the basement for 20 hours a day if he's home working, watching this stuff on the channels that's attributed to QAnon and all the propaganda, and how they come out of there daggone near not robotic, but
radicalized.
Ready to die. Y'all hear me? These people are ready to die for what they are learning on these programs. And it's scary. I hope it's not true, but it leads me to believe that no matter what happens in the election, they may not even let the election results be posted because he's built people fire up so much that they're not going to believe it's going to be true, and they're going to do what they want to do. That's what's out there. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm not a fearmonger, but it's scary to me. Maybe y'all know better. Maybe Ms. Williamson or Vanita, you know better.
Well, we all saw January 6th of 2021.
Right.
We saw in disbelief, we saw people that try to overthrow the American government right before our eyes. So it's not far-fetched when people actually start beating up on police officers. And the weird thing about that really freaked me out is the police officers had guns, they had weapons, but they didn't use them for people trying to overthrow the federal government. I was troubled by that, quite frankly. But that's a different story.
I was reading about one example here of a married couple, and the husband he was a successful man, and he took his own life, and his 3 kids grew up, and the mother raised them, and she was had background of a lawyer, and she put them through college, and she loved their kids more than she loved their own life, like a lot of parents do. But because of her getting indoctrinated and mesmerized by this QAnon stuff on television and on the internet, she got to a point of denouncing her kids and contacting all 3 of them simultaneously and told them to excise her DNA from their body, their soul. She don't want to have anything else to do with them again. And she denies their blood. It just take people off to extremism.
And so for the benefit of our audience who have not heard about Project 2025, basically it's a document prepared by the Heritage Foundation along with 50 or 60 of Trump allies. And essentially it plans to consolidate the executive power of government to reshape the United States government. So what they plan to do is take right-wing people and essentially take federal workers and make them political appointments. And so you have right-wing ideologies operating at every level of government, which means that minorities, African Americans who have the federal government is a huge employer of African Americans. So what happens? They get in a hostile work environment. So those jobs will be pushed out. So it's going to be an incredible change in American culture. That's just beginning. So I'll go to the line and take one of our callers. Caller, you have a question for us today, a comment.
All right. Good morning to you, good brother Nate, and to all you guests. And we appreciate you again this week for educating us on the laws and politics of this nation, Black people, and all alike. The critical juncture. I talked to a group of 10-year-olds the other day and educated them on what's going on. They're pretty adept now. You know, fourth and fifth grade, they're digging in, they're teaching social studies and civics. Down to third grade now, I'm seeing. And all of them told me they wish they could vote. They wish they could vote. So, and you people talking about not voting. A group of 10-year-olds, about 20 of them I was with, told me all of them wish they could vote. So these are 10-year-olds. So the future looks bright in that situation. I want to ask you your opinion, legal opinion, Nate. I want to listen to you before you hang up on me at work, about the Supreme Court ruling on the Missouri decision, trying to delay the sentencing for Donald Trump. How does Missouri have any standing, first of all? And then second of all, how did that make it up to the Supreme Court? Can you explain that to me real quick?
You familiar with that decision, Attorney Banks?
I heard about it, but he asked you.
No, anybody. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Anybody.
yes, and it's an
Anybody knows.
important
Anybody knows.
decision.
Yes. Anybody knows.
For the table. I did hear about that, and you're asking some really great questions this morning. Caller.
Brother Imhotep, thank you. Brother Imhotep, thank you.
I saw a blot on it. I didn't read the opinion.
But how do they have standing to try to delay the sentencing? How did they even have standing in the first place to try to delay the sentencing? And then to make it to the Supreme Court, it just seems like this fast tracking of garbage to the Supreme Court, because we know the issues that we're having with them. I mean, they ruled against them, but still, it was on the docket. I just didn't understand how did they have standing. Attorney Banks, how did they have standing?
Well, that's the question as to how they had standing to bring this litigation. Frankly, I wasn't following it before the decision came down, but it's something that we should be looking at very, very closely so that we can.
Yeah, because September 18th it gets sentenced September 18th, and we want that. I think that was strategic by the judge to delay it to September 18th. That's roughly a little less than 2 months, it's 5 weeks, 6 weeks out from the election. I think that's very critical that happens on September 18th. I think the public needs to understand how serious that is. We have a media that doesn't cover that we have a felon that's running. I don't want to hear anything about Kamala's race and not being Black or white or Chicano, Mexicano, Indian, whatever. I don't want to hear it. We have a clean individual, a person with good ideas and good ethics, because ethics is what counts, against an unethical person. Mark Cuban said the most important thing to him was ethics. This is a billionaire. And he said Donald Trump has been proven to be unethical. So any of you Black men that are part of this group, a small group that hates or whatever, the Democrats or whatever, go listen to what Mark Cuban said about the ethics of the office of the President of the United States. And I'll leave it at there. Thank you guys for taking my call.
Well, I'm reading as of yesterday that the Supreme Court will not hear the Missouri Attorney General's attempt to delay Trump's hush money sentencing case. That the Supreme Court on Monday rejected an attempt by the Republican Attorney General to delay President Donald Trump's sentencing in his criminal hush money case in New York. And the court declined to hear the lawsuit against New York. The brief was unsigned but indicated that Justices Alito and Thomas would have heard the complaint.
I know they would have. But
My problem is that there is a question. There was not any basis of jurisdiction for the court to undertake this, and the lawyer should have been sanctioned for filing that. It was the most ridiculous thing. And when I saw that, I'm thinking, are you freaking kidding me? Those lawyers should have probably been suspended from the practice for filing a lawsuit that dumb. So, I mean, I never read it. I just saw the highlights of it. I'm thinking, well, that's something that became news only because the person they're trying to protect is Donald Trump. Clarence Thomas gave it open and basically said that anything Trump, bring it before me, I guess. And that's why the judge down in South Florida decided to make that crazy decision that she did in terms of dismissing the criminal indictment against them. So it's just crazy stuff going on in the American judicial system right now.
Absolutely, Attorney Lee. And in that case, as you know, the jurors heard testimony over 16 days. There were 22 witnesses, and they reviewed over 300 exhibits. And as a result, found the former president guilty of all 34 counts.
Well, the gentleman's question was, how did it get to the Supreme Court? And I mean, we got special writs. If there's a death penalty case, we got special appeals. We got special things that can happen. But I didn't see it meeting any of these special things that would get it to the U.S. Supreme Court from a trial court. So it surprises me. But there's a saying that you can sue a rock or something like that. So it doesn't always make sense, but I'm with Nate there. I'm surprised that the court did not impose some type of sanctions on the lawyers for coming to them with that when they did not have jurisdiction over it.
Well, so to refresh everybody's recollection about this criminal indictment, the 34 conviction, so we'll make something real clear. Donald Trump had a lawyer named Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen was charged under the Donald Trump administration, a 7-count indictment, and counts 5, 6, and 7, as I recall, dealt with the hush money part of dealing with Stormy Daniels in terms of payment to a porn star for sexual favors and a payoff. Well, Michael Cohen was sentenced to prison, Donald Trump, former lawyer, in part for Donald Trump crime. He was an unindicted co-conspiracy. So the same allegation in counts 5, 6, and 7 of the Michael Cohen conviction dealt with what Donald Trump had done. So Donald Trump Justice Department prosecuted him, sent him to prison for Donald Trump crime. And so the pundits in the Republican Party were saying, oh, these are garbage charges. They ignored the fact that Donald Trump himself in the Justice Department determined that these were valid allegations deserving of criminal prosecution. Unfortunately, he was the one prosecuted eventually because his Justice Department decided that they could not indict the sitting president of the United States. So having said that, I want to make clear that these charges, 34 felony conviction, they do have a foundation based upon what Trump himself.
Nate, I don't know if you hear me.
Yes.
It is important for us, and I know your listeners are so attuned to the things that relate to Trump and his movements and his life. It is important to understand, it seems to me, or at least not lose our vision being broad enough to understand Project 2025 is the blueprint for all for Trump, for all of his thousands of supporters, and those folks who are both inside and outside of the government, federal government, and all kinds of organizations, to change our democracy. It is to obliterate any protections in the Constitution. It is to reverse any gains that African Americans and other minorities have had in the last 60 years. If Trump were to die today, there are already 1,000 people that the Heritage Foundation, and they're trying to disavow any connection, the folks who used to be in the administration of Trump and who seek to return there, they already have vetted over 1,000 candidates to take over the federal government to establish what has been talked about even before he was elected, a unitary government, which members of the Supreme Court actually wrote when they were students articles about a unitary government, meaning everything from the top is done and it trickles down to all when it's one government that is headed by the president and his executive branch, meaning the very top, and that all of the independent agencies, like the department is supposed to be, like the Federal Trade Commission, like the Consumers Protection Agency, which is the newest one, that all of those must report to and do what the federal government says, and importantly, to control the Justice Department. And that would result in one, obviously, they want to do away with any civil service protections. They can dismiss the thousands of federal employees all over the country, dismiss the ones who do not, who think independently, who have implemented and continue to implement those regulations that protect the average American. And then if you look at what is one point of focus for some folks on the Internal Revenue Service, what they want to implement, this whole group of 1,000 folks, what they want to implement is basically a tax structure where the richest Americans pay 15% in taxes and the floor is 35, so that they don't, I think the calculation is that the richest Americans would pay, they'd have a reduction in taxes of over $1 million a year, but that non-rich, that non-top tier, most of us would end up paying $2,500 more in taxes. In other words, eliminating the normal deductions that one would take, and you just have to pay basically a flat tax. So that the person who maybe was a school teacher pays the same as someone who's working at McDonald's, et cetera, et cetera. And to eliminate taxes on what we call tips. But someone who's, let's say, a financial, someone who's in finance could convert what they get as the end of the year, a bonus, they could convert that to, I'll just call this tips. But in every single area, we have to take a good look at it. I know it's 1,000 pages. That's what we're going to do at Wiley Branton. We're taking that apart because we've been studying this since last fall. In all of those areas, it's a fundamental change that is intended to eliminate anything that looks like, in their view, it's anti-American. They want to get rid of anything that even resembles even a little diversity, equity, inclusion. Want to reverse all of the gains during the 50s and 60s. They want to reverse all of that. And certainly they are not in favor of the protections that were hard won by you all in all of these criminal cases. They don't want to see any more redress on in the area of police brutality. So while we're focused on this election, and it's very important for us to help, and I'm just going to say this, and that I am supporting Kamala Harris. That's it. I'll say no more. But that once we have to know that this is a very, very big picture, and that all of the things we take for granted, if you go into that document, they have details spent years to figure out how to reverse it.
And you mentioned it is 990 pages. And I've been in the process of reviewing it. And it has been also distilled down to 10 major points. So there's different levels of the summaries of this document, but what is clear is that we have to inform and use our platforms like this one to inform the people of the dangers associated with Project 2025, and that it impacts not just individuals and citizens, that this is not a party issue. 2025 is not. It's a people issue. And we should be informing all people, because all people, regardless of what political party they might support, will be adversely impacted by Project 2025, which is the playbook that if the former president gets back in office, that he is going to implement beginning on day one. He's already told us that he will be a dictator beginning on day one, that he will try to exert the power to suspend the Constitution. And so that he would reinstate a Schedule F, which will concentrate unprecedented power in the executive branch to fire career government employees. And we know that many African Americans are employed by the federal government. He would eliminate, this plan would eliminate federal employee unions. And of course, we stated ban all diversity and inclusion programs in all federal offices. He's telling us that he will weaponize the Department of Justice and remove its independence, that he's going to relocate the Department of Civil Rights and render it ineffective in upholding human and civil rights in this country through its prosecutions of civil rights violations. He has stated that he's going to expand surveillance of his political opponents and actually bring investigative and criminal action against criminal components, monitor immigrant communities, and violate the rights that are currently promulgated in HIPAA, those privacy rights. He would, the word abortion is used 200 times in this project 2020. And so we need to spread the word about the threat to democracy that's articulated in this playbook. It's going to weaken the middle class, take steps to end the Affordable Care Act, deny people with pre-existing conditions, terminate Pell Grants. And these plans talk as equally importantly to gut Medicare and Social Security and increase the retirement age, eliminate the $35 insulin cap. And so the impact of 2025 will, it will have an adverse impact on all people. And I think we should ensure that we are articulating this messaging to people, even those people who are what I call cognitive dissident, which means that they advocate against their own best interest in supporting the former president. But I think that we need to ensure that everyone knows what's in this disastrous proposal.
You know, Nate asked me about qualified immunity, and I did a Donald Trump on him. I skirted his question and answered my own question. I apologize for that, Nathaniel, because I think qualified immunity, I've never been able to explain any justification for it, to be honest with you. But can you see that applying to the officer there in Illinois that shot that sister in her home and murdered that sister? I mean, it's scary to me what officers get away with, because you can't find a similar story to prosecute them that shows that it's a violation of constitutional and civil rights. So I apologize for that, Nate. But this playbook, this 2025 is a serious playbook. It's a serious playbook, and this society is being set up to implement this playbook, y'all. I'm serious about this book I'm reading, The Quiet Damage, about QAnon. There's going to, it's going to eliminate treatment for those of us who should be getting some type of compensation for what was done in the past. It's going about setting up for one leader to run this country until he die. That's a dictatorship.
Absolutely.
That's not a democracy they're setting up. So I don't know what else to say about what's happening here, folks, that the Republican Party has gone absolutely out of their mind, seems like, behind this man. But it's like Ms. Williamson said, it started before this man came into office. He's just one of those who has been charismatic enough to initiate it and take it some steps forward, Nate.
And they've been working on this for years and years and years. And my question is, where's our playbook?
Yeah, we don't have one, Vanita. We're too fair. It's the good guys don't prepare for this stuff.
So, well, where are the policy? I don't want to use the word progressive, but where are the people policy organizations? We should have our own playbook.
Well, they've done a good job, Anita. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I forget my thoughts. They've done a good job at killing us off, eliminating us, locking us up. They've done a good job at it. I remember back with the Panthers back in the 70s.
Renee, you're absolutely right. It's not just a think tank paper. This is an implementation plan.
Right.
Eliminated some good people.
Yeah, can I just add that, in fact, there are some folks who have very quickly put together, but they've worked in the field a long time on dissecting parts of this. We ourselves at the National Bar, the Wiley branch in which we are asking for proposals, written proposals, no matter how, you don't have to be a scholar. There's certainly law professors who have taken up this issue. And our ultimate goal is that we have this published, and we're approaching law reviews and others to do that. But I'd like to give, if we could step away just a little bit from and take a sort of a view, putting all this in context. In 2045, and there's been some economists and others who have looked at this. We will be the majority in the United States. White people will be the minority. And so, as one litigator told me, she saw sort of seeping into cases she was employment cases she was looking at. There is this tippy toe They don't want to they want to get rid of any, equal opportunity. They want all of those to go, except sort of keep a toe in the door so that they can argue two things. This is the conservatives and these folks here. If we can keep all of the employment opportunity, anti-discrimination cases, keep those on the books so that when we become a minority, that is, white Americans become a minority, we can say these are our protections. But for the moment, what they're arguing, for example, Nathaniel, that in cases where there is an opportunity for minority grants, for mandatory hiring of minority contractors, they want all that to go away. But because the beneficiaries are us, right? Mandatory, hiring of Black contractors for federal contracts. What it's like, okay, now when their argument that they're trying to do this in the background is that when we become the minority, we don't want to say too much. We shouldn't take advantage of these, but we just, for the time being, we want to eliminate these because they call it DEI. They call it discrimination. But 2045, and that's why we've got to, have a broad look and keep our eye open to this, that in 2045, they will be the racial minority in America.
And this first started with a lot of different pronouncements, because we've been hearing for many, many years, and they keep pushing the date back. Now it's 2045, when there will be more minority people in this country than white people. But let's go back to the year of 2015. This helped to accelerate some of this fear as well. In 2015 was the first year that more minority babies were born in this country than white babies. And so we know, and we have protective laws on the books. Affirmative action is a statutory law, right? We also know, and so we've had affirmative action, again, not intended for unqualified people, but people who were disproportionately did not have access to jobs, federal contracts, et cetera. Then, of course, there was the advent of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And now we're seeing outright frontal attacks using our civil rights laws, as was mentioned, to accomplish those objectives. That was what was utilized against the Fearless Fund, a venture capitalist fund that was established to help Black women who disproportionately received very, very, very low venture capital monies. And so we saw civil rights law being used to say that that fund somehow discriminated against white people. And so we're going to continue to see this threat. And one thing that we have to emphasize is the fact that regardless of who's elected, we have to continue to guard against the policies that are espoused in both Agenda 47 as well as Project 2025. We have a caller too, or Renee is making some great points in the chat box.
We can get it on. Let me see. Renee, you have a comment for us
Caller,
today?
can you please unmute? Caller, can you unmute?
Renee, go ahead, unmute. Hello? Okay, we're waiting on her to unmute. This is an important topic. But before, we have only a few more minutes left on the air, Attorney Banks. There's some important things occurring in the great city of Chicago. You have the Democratic convention coming there this week, but also you have that bombshell investigation there in is that Dalton?
Dalton, Illinois, where Mayor Tiffany Henyard has been subject to a lot of allegations, including there's a federal investigation pending as we speak. But the trustees hired former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot to investigate several allegations of misuse of Dalton's funds. And her initial report indicated that the town had a $5.6 million general fund balance in April 2022. And as of May 2024, they now have a $3.65 million deficit. She also disclosed in her preliminary report credit card transactions with no receipts from retail entities, including Wayfair, Amazon, Target, Walgreens, and as of June 18th, 2024, at least 589 checks totaling over $6 million were approved and printed and not sent to vendors. And so this is outrageous what Lori Lightfoot's preliminary report has disclosed. Attorney Grimes, do you have a comment?
No, I said it's a little questionable, but go ahead.
Just a little questionable, huh? So more to follow on this investigation.
What about that convention? Is the city excited about hosting a Democratic National Convention there in Chicago? There's
so much excitement regarding the convention. Chicago is ready. I read a statistic that Chicago has hosted the most Democratic national conventions. Will be hosting over 50,000 delegates, and certainly will be a joyous time here in Chicago.
Good for y'all.
Well, I hope it go well. And unfortunately, callers, we won't be able to get to you all today because we're at the end of our show. But you could join us next week. And next week, call earlier. And our phone number for next week is 833-653-3529. I'd like to thank our VIP panel today. This issue of Project 2025, this roadmap to alter American government, it looked like instead of making a democracy, making a dictatorship and controlled by one person. It's an insulting type ideology. Unfortunately, that's the playbook. So what that means, folks, is that you have to get out and vote, call 10 of your neighbors and your friends, make sure they vote. And everybody it's all hands on deck. We're the underdog. So until next week, stay safe, folks, and may God bless and keep you until we talk next week. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Lee and colleagues. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.